I see we have a lot of people that have recently joined us. Hello and welcome everybody. Please post in the chat what city you're in. I'm in Austin and my illustrious colleague Francisco is in Barcelona. So please post where you are and also how you heard about the masterclass. Where we wouldn't be good marketers if we didn't ask you how you found us, whether it's a lot of people found us from LinkedIn, some people are on my email list. So I'm always curious to know where people are and how you found out about this so that we know that what we're doing is reaching everybody. And we have somebody from LA, my dear friend Ellen, and I see my dear friend Lynn on, which is just great. And we have somebody else from Los Angeles. Learned by following Francisco. That's what I figured. A lot of you would be Francisco fans and tribes north of Seattle. Hi,
Hello,
John.
Laurie.
Toronto. Oh, we're currently in Dubai. Wow, that's exotic. We are definitely global today. All right. We met years ago. Oh, how fun. Love it. All right. Well, this is going to be very interactive. And as you promised, there's 10 people who registered first, and in the last 15 minutes, I'm going to be working with you individually. So everyone's going to learn how to have a great elevator pitch by the end of this, because everybody needs one and few people have one. And what happens is you stumble through it, or worse, you bore people, or you confuse them. And so we're going to solve all those problems today. You're going to go from boring people to inspiring them to want to work with you or refer you. We're going to go from confusing people, because the confused mind always says no, to giving clarity. And then finally, we're going to be no longer stumbling through an elevator pitch, but soaring through it. And when that happens, you start getting more referrals. You start getting people to want to engage with you because they're so clear on who you help and what problem you solve. And when that happens, it's a game changer. So I'm going to work with the first 10 people who registered. And then if we have time, I'll stay on as long as everybody wants to, and work with other people as well, so that everybody has a really great takeaway. Because when you have a great elevator pitch, then that starts to become your whole messaging, not only for cocktail parties when we get back to getting to do that, but virtual meetings, emails, all kinds of good stuff. So without any other hints of what's coming, that's known in storytelling, by the way, as an open loop. So there's your first takeaway. An open loop in storytelling is when you give people a hint of what's coming without getting into so your brain is going, wait a minute, he said he was going to get to elevator pitches. Has that happened yet? Did I miss that? So it keeps you intrigued and involved. Again, if you just are joining us, please post in the chat where you are living at the moment and how you found out about the masterclass. We'd love to know that. Let me give you a little history, a story of origin of how Francisco and I met. It's the power of LinkedIn. And oh, by the way, if you wouldn't mind, put yourself on mute if you're not talking, if I haven't called on you, because I'm hearing some background noise from someone. Thank you. So Francisco reached out to me on LinkedIn. We both love storytelling. We're both speakers about it. And he was kind enough to invite me to be on his podcast. And we just hit it off and had so much fun because we have so much belief in storytelling and the power of storytelling that we decided to collaborate today on this masterclass. So you're getting two people from different countries bringing you a whole insight into storytelling. And as you can see, I wrote a book on it, Better Selling Through Storytelling. But Francisco, please share a little bit about yourself with everyone who doesn't know you and knows me, but not you, vice versa.
Yeah, so I'm one of those people that has a certain difficulty or had a certain difficulty figuring out what my own story was. So for many, many years, I was the kid that got picked to speak in front of the class. And then I had a job as a teacher and I spoke in front of students, no problem. And I trained people and I spoke in front of big groups for every job I ever had. And even I joined Toastmasters. So Lee, I'm a member as well. I've been a member for years. And then I started competing. I even won some stuff at national level with Toastmasters. And it never really occurred to me that maybe I should do it professionally. And then someone one day said, actually, I had just found out I was going to have a second child, which caught me slightly by surprise. And then I realized, okay, well, life's going to change. Either I'm going to do something about this speaking thing now, or I'm never going to do it. And as soon as I started looking into taking my speaking professionally, you have to choose what you're going to talk about. And storytelling just seemed sort of very clearly the obvious fit as soon as I started putting my mind to it. And that's pretty much all I've been doing for the last couple of years is, there's the podcast and there's LinkedIn, and there was a book on speaking in public and telling stories. So that's been the focus. And now the focus is obviously keynote speaking, but as I'm sure it's news to no one, speaking in public at the moment professionally is not necessarily the easiest thing. So we can do this in front of a camera, but getting on stage, which is what I'm really passionate about, is probably going to have to wait for a little bit longer.
Thank you. Well, this concept of giving you a sense of who I am, I used to sell advertising for Conde Nast, and one of the people that I called on was Speedo swimwear, and they said, oh, we're not advertising in your fashion magazine, we're going to advertise in a fitness magazine. And I said, well, what if we treated your sportswear like it was high fashion? And we could invite Michael Phelps, since he's on your payroll as a spokesperson for Speedo, to a hotel pool party with people modeling the sportswear around a pool. They love that idea. And more importantly for me, I got to meet Michael Phelps. And I said to him, Michael, everyone says you're such a successful swimmer because of your physique and your feet are so big like fins and your lungs are amazing capacity, but I'm guessing there's something else. And he said, yes, John. When I was very young, my coach said to me, Michael, are you willing to work out on Sundays? Yes, coach. We just got 52 more workouts in a year than your competition. Now that story pulls you in and you think to yourself, what am I willing to do that my competition isn't willing to do? And then if we take it one step further, what am I willing to do that my competition hasn't even thought to do? So that's the power of storytelling. It grabs us. We get a sense of who I am. You get a sense of how, engaging with all this. As Francisco says, we love interacting with audiences. And I've given a couple of virtual keynotes since the pandemic started. And it's so much fun because people are hungrier now than ever to have stories. Storytelling is in our DNA. It literally, in the caveman days, is what people would sit around the glow of campfires. Now we sit around the glow of PowerPoints and Zoom calls. The need to connect does not go away just because we're physically not seeing people. So during this situation, we can decide if we want to be like an ostrich and bury our head in the sand and just go, let me know when this is all over. Or we can be like the peacock. When the peacock sees danger, it gets all big and puts up things to scare off its predators. So this one little analogy I gave to a client of mine 10 years ago, and he said, you know what I remember about your talk? My choice to be an ostrich or a peacock. And I thought to myself, that's the power of storytelling. When you tell a story that people remember years after you tell it, you know you've locked in because our mind is wired and we have those choices we make. Francisco, I'm sure you have a story in your life and in your career that people tell you, man, that's one of my favorite stories you tell. Would you care to share that?
Yeah, so this, I shared a very short version of this one on LinkedIn a few months ago, which was that when my daughter was still very young, my wife and I were sleeping, and I think it was maybe 2, 3 in the morning. We heard a very loud noise from downstairs, and we woke up, and she ran to our daughter's room to make sure she was okay. And I decided to see, okay, well, let me see what the hell was going on. It sounded like someone was breaking into our house, and I started looking for a weapon or something I could fight with, and the only thing I could find was this toy broom that my daughter used to play with all the time, and that's what I went downstairs armed with. And as soon as I was just about to just jump into the kitchen, with this ridiculous toy broom in my hands, and I thought, well, hold on, there could be a burglar. I mean, this could become a violent altercation, and maybe this is where, you know, I lose my life. And just before I opened the door to the kitchen and jumped in, I had, you know, my life flashed before my eyes, and I thought, I'm not too sure I like this life that much. I mean, this is not the life I want to be leaving behind if this is the last thing I ever do. And, you know, I jumped into the kitchen. There was no one there. I realized soon after that it was a rat making noise around the pipes. And I know so little about women that when I went back upstairs to tell my wife, I said, listen, there's nothing to worry about. It's just a rat.
Freaked you out more.
She wasn't very pacified by the situation. But, you know, the story goes on, and there's all sorts of comedy that ensued from having a rat in the house for about a week because he just wouldn't go away. But I remember telling that story, and years later, I'll meet people and they say, oh, you know, that rat story when you sort of decided that you weren't happy with your life and wanted to change things. I always remember that.
Yes, I love it. What a great example of a lesson learned or an aha moment that makes that story so memorable. And that's the big problem that we're going to help you all solve today, because we all have to sell ourselves. We have to sell ourselves to get hired. We have to sell ourselves to get people to join our team. Certainly, if we're selling a product or service, we have to sell that. And the problem is, after we stop talking to somebody on the phone or Zoom, most people forget what we've said. But if we tell a story, they're going to remember it. So this is the biggest problem that I see out there in the world. The big myth is that people feel, you know, you got to get people to know, like, and trust you. And we've heard it 100 times. And the problem is, it's the wrong order. And what that does, because people think, well, I have to get you to know me. That means I got to push out a bunch of information about me, my company, my product. Then maybe you'll like me, and then maybe you'll get to trust me. However, we're going to flip that order, and we're going to start with trust. And when you start with trust, it becomes a whole game changer, because that's where the handshake came about, was to show that you didn't have a weapon in your hand. So that fight or flight stuff, referrals are so important because there's some trust factor that gets extended. The likability factor is a heart thing. So it moves from the gut, which is the trust, to the heart. Do I like you? And here's the secret. If you're taking notes, I encourage you to write this down. The more empathy you show for someone whose problem you're solving, the more they're going to think you have their solution. So empathy becomes a huge way to up your likability factor. And then after the gut and the heart, then it goes to the head, which is, do I like you? Do I trust you? Okay. Will this work for me? So many times people will hear you give a presentation on what you're selling, and they'll go, well, that's nice, but I don't think it'll work for me. And that's the joy of storytelling, is when you pull people in, they see themselves in the story, and that becomes transformational. So who we're going to be talking about today, really why Francisco and I are partnering on this, is if you have to pitch against competitors, worked with law firms, tech companies, architects, even executive search firms, so many people, it comes down to a final 2 or 3. If you want to stop feeling pushy and being forgettable, then we have something for you. And if you really want to go from being invisible, or as I say, I think insignificant is even worse, to finding out how to be irresistible, then this is for you as well. So if you don't feel like you want to learn anything and you don't want to try anything, or you only want to make money, this is probably not for you. But we're going to give you a bonus today, which is at the end, as I mentioned, that open loop. For those of you who are on, I'm going to help the first 10 people who registered get a quick fix on your elevator pitch, and I'm happy to stay on past the hour and help anybody else who wants this. And you'll go from stumbling to soaring, from confusing to clarity, and from boring people with an elevator pitch to inspiring them. And when that happens, you're going to get more referrals and more people hiring you. So we're going to talk now about some tips so that you can figure out how to stop coming in second place. I can't tell you how many clients have said to me, You know, we get in the final 2 or 3. And if you've ever interviewed for a job, you know what this feels like. And we just are so tired of coming in second place. We don't know what we're missing. And unlike the Olympics, they don't give medals in business for second or third place. If you want to win new business, this is for you, because this concept of not being seen as a commodity is so important. And then finally, this is my favorite. So many salespeople say, oh, I feel like I'm an annoying pest when I pick up the phone or send an email. And Francisco and I are going to show you how to be seen as a welcome guest, because whoever tells a story is always welcome, because it's entertaining, hopefully, and engaging. Francisco, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it makes a massive difference if the way you communicate is something that, I think you say this yourself, is that pulls people in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if a story is just the best way to make a point. I've heard this line, I can't remember who said it exactly, is you shouldn't have a story that has no point, and you shouldn't make a point without a story. Because what eventually happens is there's this expression which is, you know, you should walk a mile in someone's shoes. Now, yes, you can't do that. You can't make people walk a mile in your shoes, but if you tell them a story, that's the next best thing. You know, a well-told story in the brain has very similar effects than actually living the same experience. So if you tell someone a story about an experience, they've now have just about lived that experience. And if you pick your story well and there is a point, then it's as if they've lived it and they've learned it through your story.
I love that. That is the essence of the old way of closing and asking somebody, do you want to buy? You want to buy? And so we're giving you some new tools, which is when you paint a picture and take people on a journey through a story, then you can literally say to them, does that sound like the kind of journey you'd like to go on? And I'm going to give some examples of that. So my promise to you today is you're going to learn what makes a good story, how to have a great elevator pitch, and then figure out what is the missing ingredient in your story to go from second place to first more often. So the first problem, as I said, is if you're not having some structure, and I was talking with Lee about this earlier, you know, you don't have confidence that every story is going to land. But when you understand the structure of a good story, it makes sense. And then, of course, when we give a bunch of logic and push out information because we believe that people have to know us before they like or trust us, that problem I talked about earlier, there's no right brain connection. Again, if you're taking notes, here's something I'd write down. The person who tells a story with an emotional hook. People buy emotionally, not logically. One of my students, Nasir, who's an engineer, he's a soil engineer, no less, and he analyzes whether a building should be built on soil. And he said, my job is business development, and I was just presenting all the facts and figures. I had no idea people buy emotionally and back it up with logic. Even a house, it's an emotional decision that you back up with logic. Oh, this will probably go up in value. Or a sports car, no one goes and says, oh, this has this many miles per gallon. It's an emotional connection first. And here's a soundbite for all of you. When you tug at someone's heartstrings, you get them to open their purse strings. So I just want to take a minute and ask people, post in the chat, if you will, real quick. What's the one thing you've gotten so far out of this first 20 minutes? We really want to make sure this is resonating. And Ted is saying empathy through storytelling. Yes. When you're describing in your stories, we're turning a boring case study into a case story in a minute. You show empathy for that person you helped so that the people that you're trying to convince to go on the journey with you say, oh, this person's like a Sherpa. That's really what I want to do. Yes, they feel empathy for the character, and you're not the hero of the story. That's the other big takeaway. Don't you agree, Francisco? That we're not the hero in our own story, it's the client, yes?
Yes, I mean, there is a time where you can use your own origin story to powerful effect, but in the vast majority of cases, the stories you want to be telling are about people like your customers or like your potential customers who struggle the way they struggle and got helped by you or your product or your service. So the analogy that I make all the time, and I think a lot of people make, is you're not Luke Skywalker, you're Yoda. right?
Yes.
So they need to, you need to tell a story where the main character, the hero, is just like them, and then you're just helping them out of their
Right.
trouble, of overcoming that problem.
Yes, Dr. Ellen, I agree. People remember the stories long after they forget facts, like that ostrich versus a peacock choice. Um, Ted, don't worry. We're going to make sure, some people say to me, wow, you're a natural storyteller. Or, gosh, I guess if I'm not born a natural storyteller, I can't learn it. The good news is Francisco and I can show you how to become a good storyteller, even if it's not something that you feel native instinctually how to do. And Devish is saying,
John,
yes.
John, just to say, I know it's going to sound weird. In one of the businesses that I've had more experience in as a salesperson, I can tell the type of stories you're talking about. Now that I think about it, I don't know how to do it in my current role. That's half the problem.
Perfect. Well, we're here to help you fix that.
Yeah, there was one
Devish is
point.
saying, oh, go ahead, Francisco.
Sorry, there was just one point from, I think was from also so Ellen said, people remember stories long after they forget facts. And then Lynn said, I realize I make decisions based on the story that I've heard. There was a very interesting study, very concerning, I think, a few years ago, where they showed one girl and told the story of this one girl, and she was hungry and they were asking for donations. And then they calculated how much money people gave. And then they showed the data of all the kids in that village, of all the children in that country. And perhaps unsurprisingly for people in a storytelling masterclass, the data got way less donations than just the story.
Yes.
And even if you did the story plus the data, the story still got more donations, because that's how our brain is wired. You can try and fight it, but it's just not how the brain works.
And Devish, our stories definitely have to have a point. That is so true. And that's why people sometimes dread when a story goes on and on and on. So we're going to give you the 4 elements that make a great story. So your story does have a point. And Lori, yes, connecting emotionally first is the key before you start with any logic. And then Lynn saying she's actually realized she's bought some things based on the story she's heard. So that is in fact true. Thanks for sharing that, everybody. It really helps. And so what happens when we don't have this emotional connection? We have no connection at all. We think we have a connection and there's none. It's just logic just goes in and out. So when you have confidence that you know how to tell a good story, you're going to soar through your elevator pitch and any other presentation. And sometimes people tell me, I get butterflies in my stomach. I get nervous when I have to tell a story, or I haven't practiced it very much. And I tell people, instead of resenting those butterflies in your stomach, the goal is to get them to fly in formation. Get that nervous energy out of your stomach and into the room. Make it about who you're helping. And Rob Angel, he's the creator of Pictionary, and he wanted to take the course and work with me on helping him craft his stories for not only his talk, but for his interviews that he was giving on his book called Game Changer. So this concept of there's a wide variety of people that use this help. You can see Awesome is an engineer who created a phone that allows you to project movies right from the phone. And he was using the course to learn how to tell that story so investors would want to invest in him. Marion is someone who's a productivity expert. And she was saying, my big aha moment was, I need to learn that stories not only impact my personal life, but my professional life. And she just was shifting everything from how she's decided to communicate with people going forward. So believe me, if they can do it, you can do this too. And so one of the exercises I want to give you right now on stacking your moments of certainty is you're going to write down 2 or 3 things really quickly when you knew you nailed it. It could be Francisco, he asked his now wife to marry him and she said yes. It could be when you got a job, anything that you have a really, you asked somebody if they wanted to enroll in your course, they said yes. All those moments of certainty, when you write them down, and then here's the secret, write down the feeling next to it. How did you feel when your now wife said yes when you asked her to marry you? You felt exhilarated, you felt happy, you felt proud. All those feelings allow you to capture what you want to put in your head, as opposed to feeling like, oh, I'm nervous. So we need to replace the fear thoughts with the confidence thoughts. And then when you stack those moments of certainty, and nothing says certain to me like Lady Gaga at the Oscars, and she was actually singing, I have confidence in me. So those moments of certainty will really help you in anything you're doing, whether you're telling a story or just stretching out of your comfort zone. Now, here is one of the most valuable things of the whole masterclass, and certainly the course that you have the opportunity to continue to work on. It's looking at this old way of selling, and my friend Lynn and I went through this. We had to give projections all the time. We think this client's 90% going to buy, 50% or 20%, or A, B, and C, however you want to look at it. The problem is nobody who is a buyer ever thinks of themselves as a percentage. So we're flipping the script, folks. We're going to look at how people see us. Are we invisible? They've never heard of us or our company. Or are we insignificant, which, as I hinted earlier, feels even worse, especially in the dating world? Or we're at the interesting rung of the ladder, and this is where people get really stuck. They get all excited, they tell their boss, or they get, oh, they said they were interested, they asked for more information. It's like being stuck at the friend zone at work. In fact, Fortune and Inc. magazine did a whole article on me on that very topic. 3 signs that you can tell you're in the friend zone at work and 3 ways to get out. So this interesting rung is not enough to get someone to go out with you or to get them to buy. So how do we get up to intriguing? Storytelling. You paint a picture like I described at the very beginning of what I did with Speedo. What if is a great phrase to use. You pull people in with that. You get that right brain imagination going. And then you get to irresistible. Now in dating, this is when you can't stop thinking about somebody, you're texting them all the time. We have clients like this. In fact, Lee was kind enough at the beginning to say, I'm in, I love your content. I heard you on a podcast, I bought your book. When people love your message and your content and your product, they think of what you have to offer as irresistible. And our job is to keep them at that level and not take those people for granted. So if you start writing down 2 or 3 people on each rung of these ladders, I work with sales teams. I just did a whole training with this on Olympus, the camera company. They use the cameras for a medical division that they send down the camera to scope you to see if you have cancer or not. And so they have a lot of different doctors and hospitals to call on, and they use this as a roadmap. Here's a hospital we've never called on. They don't even know we exist. Here's somebody who knows we exist, but they think we're insignificant. They're happy with who they're using. Here's somebody who were just stuck in the interesting zone. And then they start brainstorming with their coworkers on how do we move up to intriguing and what could we do that makes something irresistible. Francisco, I know we talked about this on when you interviewed me on your podcast. What are your thoughts about this?
I really like the way you laid out that ladder, because it's not something, I've not seen that before. I've worked in sales for a very long time, and I like the idea of the rungs of the ladder. And if you're trying to think, okay, why am I not selling, or why am I not converting these prospects? But they're usually, you typically say, oh, your pitch wasn't good enough, or maybe you got an objection and you couldn't overcome it. But it was always this sort of binary thing. There was something I was supposed to do and I didn't do it. I like that this introduces an idea of a spectrum, and you just have to go from one end of it to the other. So it just gives you, I think, it's more, encourages you more to work on it than say, well, that one didn't work at all, move on, without necessarily giving you particularly great feedback. I think this is a more interesting way to look at how to make yourself better at whatever you're trying to achieve.
Great. And if anybody has a question on this before I move on, just post it in the chat real quick. And I can certainly come back to if you have any questions on this, because here's my big goal. You're going to learn how to tell better stories, and you're going to learn how to use this ladder as a roadmap. And when you combine those 2 things, that's when you have the revenue rockstar experience. So let's see if this is going to let me. So the kinds of things we just talked about are literally the tip of the iceberg of what's in the online course that I want to share with you, the opportunity to enroll in later. So how do you get to irresistible? And I've created this course because I can't be speaking in front of everyone, and people have asked me to have the course. In fact, Olympus bought 200 copies of the course for their sales team after hearing me speak to resonate with this. And Francisco has gone through it. And this concept of, a lot of people think, oh, I don't have a story, but we're here to help you figure out what your story is, because you have a story of whether it's discovering a rat in your kitchen or a mistake you made, something that allows people to see themselves in your story. And this is the magic. This is my favorite Wizard of Oz. You know, the old way of selling is to tell these case studies. Here's an example of another client we had. And when you turn this black and white factual-based case study into a case story, do you like that effect, Francisco? Who doesn't love visuals? Then it helps you do this. So I'm going to give you an example of a case story. So I was working, as I mentioned, with Olympus Medical, and I was talking to one of their salespeople, and I said, so what are you saying to the doctors to get them to hire you and use your equipment? She said, well, our equipment is 30% faster than the other equipment you're using. And I said, well, there's no story there. What does it even mean? How long is a usual surgery without your equipment? 2.5 hours. Okay, do the math for me. What is it with it? An hour and a half. I said, okay, great. So here's what you're going to say in your case story now. Imagine how happy Dr. Higgins was at Long Beach Memorial 2 years ago when he could go out to the patient's family in the waiting room, where every minute feels like an hour, and tell them an hour earlier than expected that their loved one was okay and in fact did not have cancer. The doctor who heard that case story said, oh my God, that gives me chills. In fact, that's why I became a doctor. So that's an example of the case story, because you're tugging at that other doctor's heartstrings, remembering why he became a doctor. And you can see that the Olympus tool is just the outcome. The Olympus tool is just the catalyst that allows the doctor in that story. The hero of that story is that doctor getting to go out there. And the Olympus salespeople said, wow, we never even thought of the patient's family as being involved at all. And I said, well, my sister had ovarian cancer. My mom was sitting in that waiting room. And believe me, I know what it feels like. Every minute feels like an hour. So that's how you can turn a case study into a case story. And I have another example I can share with you as well. But there's some elements that we promised on storytelling. You paint the picture, it's the exposition, the who, what, where, when. So in that example, it was Dr. Higgins, Long Beach Memorial, 2 years ago. Problem, that surgery is normally taking 2.5 hours. And the pain point is that family is in excruciating pain waiting. The solution is he finishes an hour earlier using our equipment. And the resolution is that doctor has a renewed sense of purpose as to why he became a doctor. And then that becomes an irresistible product. Francisco, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the most interesting part of the example you're giving there is that what a lot of people do is they don't understand that there is an external problem and an internal problem. So the 30% faster is addressing an external problem. So, surgeries take too long. Okay, fine. But what's the internal problem? What's the feeling that causes? So again, you could find that it's problematic for the doctor, it's problematic for the family, but it's not, because the time itself is just a superficial measure. So whatever the problem you're trying to solve with a story, it's worth understanding what is the external problem, what is the real internal feeling you're trying, that product is gonna, or the service is going to shift. And once you understand that, then it becomes a lot easier to figure out what's the story that has to go with that.
Yes.
Because no one cares about 30%. You care about not leaving the family there suffering while they wait. So that shift is very important to understand when you're trying to figure out what is the story.
Yes. And, to reinforce your answer to Dr. Ellen, yes, you open with the story and then you can back it up with the logic and the analytics. But you don't open with it. And that is a very technical sale. So I would love other people to post either what you have learned about turning your existing case studies or clients you've worked with that you give as examples into a case story. And then again, the 4 elements of what makes a good story: the exposition, the problem, the solution, and then the magic sauce is the resolution. So as you're posting in the chat, I'm going to give another example of a case story. I was working with Gensler, which is the world's largest architecture firm, and they were in that final 3 after the proposals. And the client said to them and the other 2 firms, we're going to hire the firm we like the most because we have to work with you for 5 or 6 years. And that's when they said, oh my God, we've got to get back to the better selling through storytelling method and figure out how to work on our likability factor. We don't know where to start. We just show our designs and hope that's what gets us to win. Well, in this particular case, $1 billion was at stake. And you can Google it. Gensler won the Pittsburgh airport renovation at $1 billion based on this case story. When they were in front of the client, here's what they said. 3 years ago, JetBlue at JFK hired us to renovate the terminal. One of the challenges we faced during that multi-year project was we had to rip off all the tiles in the airport and rewire them and get them done between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. so the stores could open on time. We had all our vendors on call in case something went wrong. And sure enough, at 2 in the morning, a fuse blew. We had the vendor there in 20 minutes, fixed it. And at 8:59, the last tile went down. All the stores opened on time. And now a year after the renovation, sales are up 15% because we've designed a place that pulls people in and keeps them shopping longer. And the people at Pittsburgh said, that's the kind of journey we want to go on. You can see again, the exposition, we know exactly where we are in JetBlue at JFK. Now the problem is shown in the story, as opposed to saying, we use critical thinking to anticipate problems. They didn't have to say that. They showed that in the story by having all the vendors on call. And a little bit of drama never hurts a story. At 8:59, the last tile goes down. That's the solution. All the stores open on time. And then the secret sauce is that resolution. A year later, sales are up because of what they've done and invested in. Any comments in the chat about those 2 case stories and how you can start to use this in your own experiences? Here's the quote from the gentleman at Gensler. I've helped them not only win Pittsburgh, but also Toronto. So they call me their interview guru when they have to go in and pitch. And now I'm going to let Francisco walk you through what is in the online course, these different modules that he's experienced himself, and share with you his own takeaways. Even though he is obviously a master at storytelling, there's always something more we can learn to fine tune our stories.
Yeah, so I'll start by answering a question that just popped up on the chat, because I think we talked about the 4 elements, but we hadn't actually explained what the 4 elements were before we mentioned them. So the 4 elements are exposition, problem, solution, and resolution. So the exposition is just who, what, where, then the problem, solution, and it's kind of obvious. And then resolution is what happened after. So what are the consequences of that? So what's life like after the solution came into play? And that's something that, I think most movies will always do at the very end. You don't want to know that they just, defeated a bad guy. You want to know what the world is like after, Darth Vader is gone, or Thanos, or whoever you want to think of as the bad guy. So those are the 4 points. Right. So to the course. So the course is made up of 10 different modules, and all of them are, I think, between 10 and sort of 15 minutes long, and it's a combination of John walking through specific story examples, story structure, elements that make up different stories. He covers a whole bunch of the mindset tools that he's touched on a couple of them today, but there's all the elements that go along with selling anything. So, if you know the stories to tell and know how to tell them, but then you get too nervous to do it, or, whatever, one time it doesn't work and that defeats the whole purpose, and now you feel defeated, that doesn't work. So the mindset is part of the modules as well. And then throughout the course, there's, you go the module by module. Once you complete a module, there's a little quiz to see how much you gotten out of understanding of the course. And then interspersed with that, there's a whole bunch of really cool videos. There's some interviews from John from other people. So it's quite a different type of media in there. And I completed it not long ago, and I've got my little certificate there. which is cool. And I think there's always that interesting aspect of you completed a module and you feel that good feeling of, okay, I've done this one, there's 7 left or 6 left, and now I want to complete them. So I think that always helps the motivation of going through any of these things. This is a good, I think, 2.5 hours in total. So it's good that there's that gamification element to keep you going and get to the very end, so you get all the content in.
So you could do 10 minutes a day for 10 days, or you could knock it off like a Netflix binge thing. People have done all kinds of variations on it. And I've got a lot of production quality in there, so you feel like you're being entertained. I figured if I'm going to create a course on storytelling, I should have some video content. It's not just me talking, it's taking you on different visuals of stories. And
John, let me just throw a quick example before we go to the bonuses.
Yeah.
Because so the story you've given is a very big client story, and I just wanted to throw something in that's sort of in the other end of that scale. Yeah. So I went to my daughter. So my daughter's school was changing. They were making it from this very small Montessori school to a very large international school, and they were showing the school around to new families and to the existing families who had to decide if they were going to stay or not. And I mean, if you've seen people presenting, people who are not trained to present, it was terrible. Yeah, I mean, the building was beautiful, the site was beautiful, but then as soon as they started telling us about the school and what they were trying to do, it was the most boring thing you've ever seen. PowerPoint that doesn't work, and endless conversations about facts and statistics no one cared about. So I got home and I spoke to them and I said, listen, if you don't ever want any families to enroll, then that's fine. But if you would like some families to enroll, then maybe we should have a conversation. Yeah. And I asked him, why are you doing this? This is like very hard thing you're doing. And he said, well, because a few years ago, I looked for a school for my daughter, and I just couldn't find a school I was happy with. And I went to schools that they weren't beautiful. The environment wasn't nice. Yes. And then I spoke to the teachers, and everything just sounded boring. And I didn't want my kids to be as bored in school as I was. And then one day I was just so desperate trying to find a different school. And I looked at my wife and said, we should start a school. And she laughed in my face. And I said, no, I'm being serious. We should start a school. And there was more to that story, how his grandfather helped him, start making materials for that first school. Yes. But I said to him, that's why people should trust their kids to you, because you're so passionate about education that you would start a school to give your daughter the education you want her to have. So I said to him, just go up there, show them the building, and then tell them this story. And I guarantee no one is going to ask you about the curriculum. No one is going to ask you about how many students per class. No one cares, because they know you care, and they trust that you can lead this project going forward.
And that's one of the things in the course, is how to craft your own story of origin, which is a perfect example of that. And so I want to keep working with people. So I created a private Facebook group once you've completed the course that you get to be in and get my help once a week with any pitches you have coming up, or your own personal stories, or an elevator pitch you want to work on, when you can also post questions in there in between the weekly connection. I'm happy to send you a signed copy of my book. And then we're going to be doing a virtual event where people like Francisco will be available and speaking about what they're doing. And then I'm going to have a little contest for whoever becomes the best brand ambassador for the course. Will get to be a guest on my podcast. And I have some bonus videos to help you be good on Zoom, making sure your lighting is good and you're framing yourself properly. And I've been on television. I've been interviewed by Larry King, and I have some tips of what to do should that ever be a goal for you, is to get on TV so you avoid some mistakes there. And I have a 60-day guarantee. If you're not seeing an increase in the results of your sales, I am happy to refund your money, because I really want to de-risk this for you and make sure that I'm taking on the risk. And the course is priced at only $497. Francisco's going to post in the chat the link you can click on to enroll today. And if you enroll today, I'm going to give you another bonus, which is a surprise, which is getting a whole hour with me one-on-one. Now, clearly, I can't do this for everyone who enrolls in the course, But if people pay me $500 to work with me one-on-one, and you'll get a sense of this in a minute when I work with the elevator pitch, to get a whole hour with me on top of the course. So the course is, the value of getting the bonus hour with me is almost worth the whole course itself, on top of the guarantee. So Francisco's gonna post his link, if you don't mind, Francisco, in the chat.
I think I've just done.
Oh, you just see it? I see it now. Perfect. And and then we'll be able to work with you, not only in the private Facebook group, but you'll get this one-on-one attention. And that's after you go through the course, we hit the ground running because we're all speaking with it. So now we're going to jump into the elevator pitch. And I'm not sure, maybe Kristen can help me and see the names that are on here. I'm going to let Kristen, my amazing virtual assistant who's live here, call on people who've signed up, because I see some names, but I don't see those names in the, like Maria.
I have it.
You got it?
Yep, so Maria's first.
Okay, Maria, you can take yourself off mute. Let me see your camera. I'm going to teach everybody now how to have this great elevator pitch. I'm going to give you an example, and then you're going to use this format. Okay, Maria? So hopefully you're there while you can take yourself off mute and put your camera on. Hello. Okay, great.
Hello.
Hello. All right. So here's what I say to people. You know how salespeople in companies struggle to not be seen as a commodity? Well, I am known as the pitch whisperer, and I get hired as a speaker to their annual sales meetings and teach them how to become storytellers and turn boring case studies into compelling case stories. And when that happens, they become revenue rock stars. So a good elevator pitch has these elements. Who do you help? What problem do you solve? And now the secret sauce, just like in the story, the resolution. What is life like for those people after you've solved their problems? Now, the mistake most people make when they give their elevator pitch casually to friends at a party, or someone just says to you, what do you do? Is most people start off with, I help, or I do, da, da, da. And the problem is we go from being very conversational to being robotic. So the phrase you'll notice I used in that situation was, you know how. I want everyone to write that down. That's the first stage. And after you say that, you insert who you help and what problem you solve. And after you describe that, you then enter something and says, and when that happens, this happens. I'm going to give you one other example that I use sometimes, and you'll hear it now even clearer. You know how everybody needs a good elevator pitch and few people have one? I'm known as the pitch whisperer, and I help people go from boring people to inspiring them. And when that happens, they get referrals or get hired on the spot. So you see how it starts off very conversational? You know how? And if you can have a little hook in there, like people say, the whole goal of your elevator pitch is this, everybody. Intrigue people enough to say, wow, Maria, wow, Lee, wow, Lynn, that's interesting, tell me more. It's not an invitation for a 10-minute monologue. Okay, Maria, let's hear what you can say using this format.
You really put me on spot first there.
It's okay.
I help leaders connect with their teams through tailored workshops for leadership development. And when that happens, everybody goes home happy with more money in their pocket.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple questions, Maria. What is the problem you're solving in these workshops that leaders are not doing now?
They're not connected with the team. The leaders are frustrated, the teams are frustrated. They both feel like the other party doesn't care and the other party doesn't understand.
Okay, got it.
What I'm doing with that is showing that everybody is going to work to do their best.
Yes. All right, so feel free to record this on your phone if you can. So I'm going to give you the revised quick fix as promised. And I want you to, instead of saying I help, you're going to start with you know how. All right, ready?
Mm-hmm.
You know how leaders are struggling to have a connection with their team, and the team is equally frustrated that they feel like the leaders don't care about them? Well, I come in to companies and I help resolve all of those problems. I make the leaders feel like their team is connected and not checked out, and I make the team feel like the leader cares about them. And when that happens, business soars and morale goes up and productivity is at an all-time high. See the difference? Hear the difference?
Yeah.
Not if you say yes, put in the chat room, say, oh my God, Maria, and I totally get what you do much better now. Let Maria, see how that's stronger? You want to give it another shot? Remember, start with you know how.
You know how leaders are very frustrated with their teams not giving enough at work, and
Yep.
in return, the teams are very frustrated that the leaders don't care about them.
Yep.
Now I go in a company and I make sure I connect the dots. I make people feel like they belong, and I make leaders have hassle-free performance improvement. And at the end of the day, everybody goes home happy and more fulfilled.
Yes, I would just, it's a lot better, isn't it, everybody? What I want to say is, and happy and more fulfilled is typically not a big outcome that businesses are looking for. They're looking for a more engaged team or more productive team. So just change your outcome to that. It's really good, much better. Great job. Isn't that fun to see the transformation in 2 minutes like this? I love this stuff. Okay, Kristen, who else do we have on that is signed up first?
So next is going to be Devesh.
Hello. If you can take your put your camera on. There you are. Hello.
How's it going?
Okay, let's hear what you have.
Sure. So you know how when people who want to grow themselves and the communities that they operate in, they're not really able to sort of do that. They want to impact people around them, but they're not sure about how to go through it. So at Progressaholic, we highlight stories of individuals dedicated to the progress of self and society to educate you on creating an impact within yourself and the communities that you operate in, so that at the end of the day, you live a more fulfilled life as you improve your service to others and to yourself. Okay.
It's a little generic for me. It's a little general. I need a little more specifics. I'm still not 100% clear on who you help and what problem you solve.
Sure.
So let me ask you a couple questions. What is the name of the company again?
Progressaholic.
Progressaholic. Instead of being a perfectionist, you're a progressaholic?
Yeah, basically. So like alcoholic, but instead of alcohol, progress. The main idea is that you're dedicated to the progress of self, individual, and society. And we do that through our podcast and our blog, basically.
Okay. And who's your ideal client?
An ideal client would be someone that's between the ages of 18 and 30, because that's most of our audience. And they're really dedicated to sort of improving themselves, personal impact, but also social impact and improving the communities that they operate in.
Okay. So that all doesn't seem very conversational. I want you to pretend you and I are having a beer at a bar. And you're telling me, you know how today's youth is struggling with trying to figure out who they are and how they can make an impact in the world?
Yeah.
Well, what I do is we have a company called Progressaholic, and we help people let go of needing to be a perfectionist and start celebrating being a progressionist. And they become addicted to wanting to make progress on themselves. And as they continue to improve themselves, the irony is that they end up having a bigger impact in the world.
Yeah.
Much clearer?
Yeah, way better. Yeah.
Okay. Let me hear you say a revised version of that now.
Sure. So you know how millennials today want to make an impact in their society, but they're not too sure about that? Well, what we do at Progressaholic is we bring on individuals that have created an impact in society to educate the youth on hopefully impacting themselves, but then in return impacting the people around them as well.
Great. Just make sure you say, and when people start focusing and celebrating their progress, their growth happens 10x.
Yeah.
So awesome. That's the resolution part of that. Better?
Great. Thank you so much.
You bet.
The other thing I would suggest there is just worry a bit less. I would think, John, tell me to shut up if I'm completely off mark, but worry a bit less about exactly how you do that.
Correct.
And more about this is the problem and this is the outcome. So for example, just to give you an example, so I could use as mine, I could say, you know how a lot of businesses feel they have a great product or service, but they struggle to explain what they do and get those customers through the door. So I help them tell the right stories so people understand what they do and want it. That's it.
Yep. We don't need to know all the details. We just need to know who you help, what problem you solve, and what life is like for them after that, not how you do it. Because remember, the whole goal is to be intrigued enough to say, that's interesting, tell me more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Kristen,
so
who's next?
So I don't think that anyone else on our original list is here right now, but John Lawrence, you would be the next if you have anything to share.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, I'm in my I'm in my COVID wear, so t-shirt abound.
No worries.
Okay, so I actually don't have a really great elevator pitch, but I'll give you a shot at one of the things I'm working on right now.
Yep.
So you know how teams that work together in offices have moments throughout their days where they connect with each other about things that aren't strictly work related? Some of my most successful teams have even used breaks at lunch or after work to play games with each other. And we know that great games engage our problem-solving centers, create connection between players, and create space for innovation. And for remote teams, it's often difficult to find moments and ways to connect with each other, a problem that has grown significantly worse with COVID-19. So Code 5 Games, I'm the founder, helps remote teams connect with each other using the power of play, and uses so this is where it goes off the rails. We use insights that we get from the play to help teams improve their communication and connection with each other and reduce employee turnover and increase employee innovation and engagement.
Okay, great. All right, feel free to record this.
Okay.
So we want to start with the problem. You were starting with how great it is at work when people interact and have breaks with each other. So we need to start with the problem. So here's my version of what you said. What's the name of your company?
Code 5 Games.
Code 5?
Yep.
C-O-D-E,
Code 5.
yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and this is a tip for everybody. The first time somebody hears your company name, you got to really pause and enunciate it and slow down so that people can let that land, okay? Whether it's Progressive-holic or Code 5 Games, say it, don't rush through it, okay? You know how one of the things that people are complaining the most about from having to work remotely is there's never any time to have those casuals, water cooler conversations with people where you actually bond with them? Well, we have a solution for that, and it's called Code 5 Games. And it allows people to not have to be in the same space to actually interact with each other and have non-work related conversations and actually play together. And we found that the team that plays together is the team that stays together. There's your soundbite.
That's funny. That's on one of my tagline worksheets I've been working through. So.
There it is. That's all you have to say. And people are intrigued enough to go, that's interesting, tell me more. Not about innovation and all that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, much shorter. Remember, here's your checklist for a good elevator pitch, everybody. Is it clear? Is it concise? Is it compelling? And I think that's much, it checks off all those boxes, yes?
This is Joshua. Can I help you?
All right, let's Joshua, can you put yourself on mute, please? Or maybe you, let's see if I can do it, I'm not sure. Josh, if you can put yourself on mute, that'd be great. Let's see if I know how to do that. I don't think I do.
I think you should be able to. I think if you just scroll over his picture, you should be able to mute him where the microphone will be.
Oh, there we go. Boom, I did it. Thank you. A Zoom test. Woo! All right, John, let's hear you say a version of what I just said back.
Okay. So you know the problem when, sorry, that doesn't really.
You know how?
You know how one of the things people complain about when they're working remotely is that they really miss the bonding, the bonding they used to have with office mates. Gosh, sorry, I totally skipped over what you said because I recorded part of it. I wrote down the first part and you went too fast for me.
No worries. So we have a solution for that.
We have a, right, that's right. Okay, so we have a solution for that. It's called Code 5 Games. And we are a play as a service platform that provides space for innovation and for teams to play together so that they can stay together.
Nice.
Still not
That's
good.
better.
I got a lot of work to do.
It's a lot better than it was. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right. Kristen, is there anyone else that you see on the list? Otherwise, we'll just
So-
open it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, Michael, Lynn, I don't know if anyone had something that they would like to share, but you're there on the list.
Oh, asked to unmute.
I
Are
would
you-
love to.
Okay, Lynn, let's hear it.
I know John will tell me exactly what I need to do. So, okay. You know how there are millions of people around the world suffering with chronic pain. I sell a breakthrough wearable device that allows people to manage their own health on a daily basis so they could live better, age younger, and manage chronic pain.
Got it. So, first of all, I would say, let's shift the word sell to offer.
Okay?
And let's get into the pain a little bit more and a little bit away from living better and aging and all that other stuff. Let's just laser focus in on the pain.
Okay.
So I would say something along the lines of, and give me the name, Healy, is that the name of it? We want, right?
Yeah.
We always want to say the name in the elevator pitch.
Okay.
All right, so here's how I would revise that. You know how chronic pain, whether it's back pain, arthritis, neck pain, is such a problem.
Migraine.
What is it? Migraines. It's such a problem for so many people. I know I personally have experienced, and then insert whatever your pain challenge is. And when I found Healy, which is a wearable product like Fitbit almost, that can help you reduce your pain instantly without having to take pills or anything else, I was so happy that I finally found some relief in my own personal pain, and that's what's caused me to want to offer that to other people who might be experiencing similar kinds of pain. That's all I have to say.
Great.
A little crisper, yes? A little
Yes.
more targeted?
Yes.
All right, let's hear your new version.
You know how people all over the world are oh, no. I'm going back to what I said.
Don't say the world. Just say, you know how there's a lot of people suffering with.
A lot of people in the world struggling with arthritis, pain, discomfort from Lyme disease, migraine headaches. I had my own issues, and I found a product called the Healy, which is a wearable technology that allows you to manage your pain better. It allowed me to relieve my headaches and manage my health on a daily basis and live pain-free.
And so now that's why I love offering it to other people.
And that's why I love offering it to other people.
Yeah, when you have that personal pain point or that empathy that you've been through the pain, then people go, oh, it's authentic. I want to respond to that. Love it.
John,
Yes.
what is your, because one of the things that I'm sort of just getting my head around this, you said that obviously we want that to be as intriguing as possible.
Yes.
Wouldn't you say that obviously depends on the situation, right? But in some cases you can basically just take out that middle there, not the company name or what you offer, and just, this is the problem, this is a problem you'll face, whatever. And, I help people, or my company helps people find or manage that by themselves without needing doctors or whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
I think in some scenarios, it's like a kind of a social situation, someone asks you that, you might not want to use the whole thing, and just say, hey, these pains we get as we get older in the high mind. Now my company helps people manage that by themselves and, feel a bit less miserable on a day-to-day basis.
It's a personal choice, but I can tell you when people work for, I don't know, let's say Apple or AT&T or IBM or big names that people recognize, they're very proud. Sure. What do you do? Oh, I work at, and so I think even if it's your own company and your own name, and we want people to remember us and the name of the company, or if they've got, what's it called again? Anything that intrigues them to say, Healy, what does that mean? How they come up with that name? And then you have permission to give the story of origin. So whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Kristen, anybody else that's on that wants to, that's next up?
Does anyone want to volunteer?
Yeah, how about you, Lee or Ted? You were one of the first guys on.
I'm in.
Okay, let's hear it.
You know how small to medium-sized businesses struggle to find new customers? We help small to medium-sized businesses find hard-to-reach customers who have cut the cord and are hard to reach with traditional media. They find the ability to tell their story better to a group of consumers who are hard to reach is helping them get new consumers in the door to enjoy the experience they produce.
Okay, that last part's a little confusing.
Sure.
Is there any particular industries you specialize in this small to medium size?
Well, as it turns out, it's restaurants and dentists.
Okay, great. Then say that. That's much more interesting than small to medium sized business. So, you know how restaurants and dentists are struggling to try and get people to use them? You know, they're basically, you know, everyone goes, oh, I guess I go to Yelp, or I guess I go, you know, I watch a commercial for Olive Garden and I guess that's where I'm going. Well, we help restaurants and dentists figure out how to find their ideal clients in a unique way that makes them irresistible. And when that happens, the tables fill up at the restaurants and the dentist has a waiting list to get an appointment. That's really what you're selling. And then we don't have to know how you do it. We don't have to worry about cutting the cord or any of that stuff. It's just like, oh, I know who you help. If I have a dentist that's struggling, or gosh, that's interesting now. Tell me more, Lee, because God, the restaurants are struggling. How are you helping them? It invites more of a conversation. Yes?
I love the imagery of the success vision of a full restaurant with tables or a full waiting room. That's a very powerful image.
Fantastic.
Lee, something to keep in mind, and again, this goes for everyone and every story. You want stories to be relatable. You want them to have emotion or trigger some emotion, and you want them to be specific. And the specific is very important. You want, you know, a story should live in a specific moment. That should be a main moment where the story revolves around, but it should have specific details. If you're talking about, as John said, if you're talking about restaurants and dentists, say restaurants and dentists. If you are dealing with, you know, as Lynn was saying, if you're dealing with back pain and migraine, you can say back pain and migraine and the specific people that you help, because otherwise it becomes this generic waffle that no one is ever going to see themselves in that pitch because they don't know who you're talking about. So make sure that that's specific because the right people will hear it.
Great.
Terrific.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Ellen.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to invite you into my my bedroom.
Wow.
So, welcome everyone. All right, here's my attempt. So I'm looking forward to the rewrite. You know how people's stress has increased tenfold since this pandemic, leaving them anxious, overwhelmed, and unfocused. Heart-centered programs provide solid, easy-to-use strategies to relieve chronic stress so they're more energized and engaged.
Okay, great. The opening is really strong.
Okay.
Love it. You know how stress is up tenfold. Everyone's feeling more anxious, more, would you say confused and unfocused?
Overwhelmed and unfocused.
Overwhelmed. Okay. That's great. And really take a pause between those things so we can do our own internal check-in. Do I feel that way? Yep. Okay. So okay. You know how stress is up tenfold after this pandemic. People are feeling more anxious, more overwhelmed, and even more unfocused. Then now we have to reformat what you say after that, because you talk about heart-centered programs, but you lose us there.
Okay.
We need to go. I've experienced that, just like we did with Lynn. And so I've created a heart-centered workshop that helps people go from anxious to calm, from overwhelmed to focused. And when all that happens, people are able to get back to a sense of remembering that they can cope with anything going on in the world and in their life.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm glad I'm recording it.
Good.
Okay.
Nice. Fantastic. You want to give it another shot?
Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
So when you switched it from I, and the Heart Center Programs is the name of my business. So how do I differentiate, or because you said
You're the founder. You're the founder of the business. Yes.
Yes.
Remember, everybody, people invest in you and buy you, not the product. When people enroll in my course that Francisco and I are, sharing, they're enrolling with our passion, our content, our ability to help you go from stumbling to having great stories to not coming in second place anymore. So I talk about it in terms of, that's why I created this course to help people just like you tell better stories so you get more clients. So you can totally say, I've experienced all of those stress factors, and that's why I created this to help other people like myself not be so anxious and overwhelmed and unfocused.
Okay, great. Okay.
So
Thank you.
You're up? You're good? You want to practice or not?
I'll try one more time. Let's see if I.
The transformations is always amazing because you can see feedback from other people going, oh my God, that's so much better. I totally get what you do now.
Okay. All right, let me give it a shot. All right, you know how people's stress has increased tenfold since this pandemic, leaving them anxious, overwhelmed, and unfocused. I know because that's been me. And that's why I have created some programs through Heart Center. And that's why I've created some programs to help you relieve chronic stress, to go from anxious to calm, from overwhelmed to focused, from unhappy to happy, so that you're more engaged, energized in both your life and your business.
Nice. Much better. You're getting some nods. I love it. Yeah. Thanks, Ted. All right. Well, I'm happy to stay on as long as anybody else, if there's anybody else that wants my help on this, or if you have any questions on what the experience of the course is. And again, if you enroll today, you get a whole hour with me after you take the course for this kind of experience. And you can see how in a few minutes I can help people imagine a whole hour with me, what your outcomes would be.
Here's a very quick way to remember what you're trying to do, both with the pitch, with the elevator pitch, and also with most stories you tell, is you're trying to move your characters from pain to power. Just remember that, and the elevator pitch is the same. There's pain, your customers are feeling, that other people are feeling, and at the end, they are more powerful than they were before. So if you remember that, that will mean that you have to start with a struggle and you have to end with the solution, or you have to end with a better place. So as long as you remember that, and that will apply also for a story you're telling about your potential customers. You want to move them from their pain point to for them being able to do something that they cannot do at the moment. So that little trick, again, if it's a longer story, there will be the path to get there. On an elevator pitch, we're skipping the path, and this is the pain and this is the power, and that's kind of all you need to remember.
Fantastic.
Really good.
Okay, anybody? Anything else? Anybody else?
I will tell you this, John.
Yes.
I don't know that I have the money for your course right now, but what's intriguing to me in an open loop fashion is the fact that I think as salesmen and as people, we tell stories the way we tell stories. We don't think about how we're telling them. We don't put them into different pieces. I never thought about how an elevator pitch worked. I already wrote 3 while we were sitting here, because now I actually understand. And I've had this happen in sales courses where they explain how I do the sale, but I never knew the terms. I was doing them. I just didn't know the terms.
Yep.
So the one other question I have is really for Francisco, and that is, obviously every story isn't pain to power, or is it?
No, not every story is pain to power, but you have to keep this in mind. We are not talking about telling stories just to entertain. We're talking about stories that you're going to use in business. So the story that you're using in business is you have struggled with something and you've overcome it, and this is why people should trust you, or your customer is struggling with something and you guide them out of that trouble and they will overcome it. So
yes, and for fun, I have a new one, and I'm gonna, if you have a second, I'll give it to it's really quick. I was driving my car the other day and it was raining and I hit the exit at 65 miles an hour instead of 35 miles an hour. I'm a very good driver. I immediately lost control of my car. My life flashed before my eyes. I thought for sure I'm going into the wall. And then the ABS brake system kicked in within 10 seconds. And before I could even panic, the automation that's built into my car saved my life and didn't even let me break a sweat. And all of that happened in 10 seconds. And I can do the same thing for your data. It's how I'm going to make it work at some point. I haven't been able to tie it together, but automation is what people are afraid of.
Yeah.
And they need to be less afraid of it and be more open to using it.
I like that a lot. Now, Ted, let me ask you, when you make a sale for this data management, how much is the average sale?
Oh no, it's worth me paying for your course if that's where you're going. It depends. It depends. It can be as low as $200. It can be as high as $250,000.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. So I'm sure you get that same objection from people you're trying to get by. You know, they go, oh, we just don't have the budget right now to do this. So the question I will give you to ask them, and the question I'm going to ask you is, what is the cost of not doing this now?
The cost is a lot of research for me to figure out how stories are told without having you tell me. That would be the cost.
And not getting my personal tweaking on your pitches, and they're going to be losing these 200,000 plus sales to a competitor who is telling a better story than you are because you weren't ready to do this. This is a skill you'll have your whole life. And of course, I'm sure that the cost of someone not automating is, you know, if that is equally as dramatic as what you were describing with the car. So that's, you know, I have to show you how to sell yourselves, and it's the same, you know, it's both sides of the table. I've been on both sides. And, you know, that's why Lynn said, listen, when there's a story, there's always a, you know, there's two things people go, is this for me? Okay, yes, I need this. And is this the right time? And what is my life going to be like? Am I tired of coming in second? Do I want to be seen as an annoying pest or a welcome guest? So
I'm far worse than Ellen and Lynn and the rest of your people here because I don't even get the chance to be in front of the customer. I'm very new. I'm an old man, rookie in a new business. I've only been doing this a year. And honestly, I'm now maybe at the point that you could help me because I now know enough to be dangerous, and I would actually like to talk
I would love to help you. Yeah.
So
I've got
to work on this. You guys were terrific today, and I know I'll be looking for you on LinkedIn, and I very well may sign up for the course.
Fantastic.
I'm a pretty quick study, and you've given a lot of information.
Good. Well, the good news is storytelling makes you ageless. And Lynn, about agelessness. Look at her; she's gorgeous. Hasn't aged a day since I've known her. And so, getting out of that mindset that I'm an old guy in a new situation, the stories will make you ageless. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Here's how you can stay connected to me and Francisco. You still have the link if anybody would like to get that bonus of having an hour with me. There it is in the chat. And let me know if you have any other questions about the course or you know, and I can't thank Francisco enough for all of the incredible videos you created to invite people here. And we're looking forward to continuing to help as many people as possible become master storytellers. Plato said storytellers rule the world. It's just as true then as it is now. And he didn't even have to compete with the internet. So if you really want to make an impact in society, become a better storyteller. And we're here to help you do that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
Thanks. You both were great.
Thank you, Lynn.
Very much.